Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss American Trading Corporation, and thank you for tuning into our podcast, The Secret War on Cash. It's entitled Secret War on Cash because we have offered this report now for getting close to, I believe, 15 years, with certainly revisions along the way. But it's been a very dynamic report because there has been such a war on cash that has been taking place. And ladies and gentlemen, we are all living in that war. The war pertains to higher costs or prices of fuel, food, energy, just everyday life. And some of the shifts and changes we see happening in our job market and our economy, and that we're going to continue to see. And so I have with me my co-host Chris Agelastos. You'll see on your screen actually the Secret War Against Cash report. You can actually contact our office, and if you haven't done so, you need to do so immediately to get a free copy of it. You can call us at 1-800-289-2646. You can also text us at 1-800-289-2646 or visit us online at SwissAmerica.com and get yourself a copy. Well, one of the big wars that's been brewing for a little bit here now is BRICS. And BRICS is it's a runaway train at this point, so it would
hmm
seem. The problem with BRICS, if you're just tuning in here recently to our podcast and are not all too familiar with BRICS, is their mantra is de-dollarization. And depending on who you talk to or which foreign leader you're talking about, it's not necessarily an antagonistic de-dollarization in some cases. It's really just become kind of a financial necessity, or one of those things that was just birthed out of like the need, if you will.
hmm
And as you see here, BRICS is in the process of launching an alternative trading platform. And bottom line is that this is something that is directly uh, counterproductive, if you will, to the substance or strength of the U.S. dollar. And not only that, just the natural development of this is going to be something that, as many articles have said and many commentators have said, dethrone the U.S. dollar. Which we've already been seeing a lot of that taking place with fiat currencies being in question or jeopardy. And I say that as gold just took over the euro in terms of the global reserve status with countries
hmm
out there. So bottom line is, Chris, they're talking about this alternative trading platform. For our
Yep.
for our listeners or viewers here, kind of explain a little bit about what they're doing and what this means to us.
Yeah. So for well over 50 years now, the U.S. dollar has been the primary payment tool for countries doing international trade with each other. They would convert their currency into the dollar and use dollars to order goods and services from other nations. And what's been happening, especially over the last few years, is a shift away from the US dollar. And there's multiple things going on here. Like you said, it's not just one thing, but number one, the entire world is becoming a lot more electronic. And so you can settle transactions much more quickly electronically. And BRICS specifically is developing a platform to be able to do this, but to also be able to use their own currencies to pay for these transactions. So it essentially eliminates a step where they would have to convert their currency into US dollars, or where they would have to hold more US dollars in their central bank reserves, for example, to use for things like this. They can now rely more on their own currency, which is quicker and easier for them. It gives their currency more influence in the world, which again is a positive. And also, it limits their reliance on the dollar. And as I think most people have seen, the value of the dollar, as many currencies, has fallen significantly over the years. So we're also, I mean, I know everybody has heard the word sanctions, right? We've heard trade wars. So there's a lot of ways that currencies, and in this case the U.S. dollar, can be used as leverage to get other nations to do what we want them to do. Even if it's a very good, noble thing that they should be doing anyway, like maybe ending a war, for example. But they don't want to have to listen to us. So this is one more way where they can uh, do settlements in their own local currencies, minimize their reliance on the dollar, and also minimize the effects of some of the policies that President Biden has put into place, and that President Trump has kept in place or increased.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Biden, and it mentions this in the article. There are some who are taking a shot at Trump for,
Hmm.
basically accelerating this process of the trading platform and the further development of BRICS. And I will defend President Trump in this instance, in so much as that, yes, did he, as he took office, before he even took office, he was already going at these other countries with the tariffs, and that in and of itself did kind of accelerate this whole discussion, but he had to. And
Hmm.
the reason I will kind of defend Trump on this one, and which I would have no problem with defending him, I think there's a lot of great things he's got going, but the bottom line is that we talked about this in our podcast for almost 2 years, how the Biden administration was absolutely silent when it came to BRICS.
Hmm.
You didn't hear anything. They weren't talking about this de-dollarization at all. They weren't addressing the issue. And Trump mentions that. He's like, this is something, the wheels were already put in motion. And
Yeah.
it's not to say that, technically speaking, BRICS have been around even prior to Biden, but things just really started accelerating very quickly in
Hmm.
a very short period of time with BRICS. And again, that's where the Biden administration just kind of idly sat by. And so
Yeah.
this the real frightening thing, if you subscribe to the notion, which I do, that BRICS and this de-dollarization is not a good thing for the US economy, not a good thing for the US dollar. The frightening thing about it is what they're doing makes sense and it's working. And
Yeah.
so that's going to be a tough thing to stop. And so now, looking here at our second article, how China powers the Chinese yuan via CIPS payments, and I'll let you get into that. But
Hmm.
bottom line is that as I was the numbers of what's happening with the yuan, which they're a pretty central part to this whole BRICS movement or
Hmm.
alliance. They're talking about how in roughly the last year that the use of yuan for settling payments and whatnot, I think, is up like 43%.
Yeah.
Huge,
It's huge. Yeah.
huge. And so there again, with this kind of momentum, Chris, how in the world does the US get in front of this thing?
Yeah, well, that's just the thing. I don't know that we really can, and I know, I've received comments before and people saying, look, hey, that's anti-American to say that. Well, I'm not anti-America. I want us to get ahead of it, but you also have to look at the facts and the figures, and like President Trump said, the wheels were already in motion, right? This is something that's already moving, and we need to try and slow it down. So, can we stop it? I hope so, but it's going to start with us just making progress towards slowing things down. And with China doing, I think it said of approximately 24, 25 trillion dollars in transactions with the yuan, that is completely sidestepping the dollar. And like you mentioned, 43% growth, and they're using their influence in BRICS because they are one of the major players, if not the biggest player in BRICS. They're using their influence to push, or I want to say encourage, I guess, other nations to go along with their system and using their payment system. So, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, several countries in Africa and the Middle East are already using this system and sidestepping the dollar. So this is a big strategy. It's not just an overnight battle that we're facing here, but they are pushing to continually reduce their dependence on the dollar and all of the BRICS nations' dependence on the dollar. And I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. And I remember, over the last several years, we've heard a lot of talk about Russia and worries about the Russia-Ukraine conflict and maybe relations between the U.S. and Russia. And I've heard multiple military leaders say, it's not that Russia's not a problem, but what we really need to do is keep our eyes on China and what China is doing. And this is another example of that. I think they are quietly moving themselves into a position to try and dominate the world's economy. And, considering We're number one in that spot right now, yet a good portion of our goods that we buy here in the country are manufactured in China. I would say that they're certainly on the right path for their nation. And we need to reverse some of that. We certainly need to put all of our efforts into slowing down this train.
Which, President Trump it's all over the news. He's working on doing that. Again, it's just the momentum is tremendous. And again, this, as I mentioned a moment ago, the challenge is that they've kind of implemented or put in place this system, and the system works. And
Right.
so why would you let me tell you something for those of you who are not fully familiar with what this all means. I mean, really, bottom line, the simplest way of putting it, I can tell you what currency has not strengthened by 43% in the last year, and that's the US
Yeah.
dollar. And that 43%, I mean, you look at numbers like that, that is incredible. So
Hmm.
something that I'm sure we'll be talking more in the future. And again, as I mentioned a moment ago, if you haven't contacted us for your free copy of The Secret War, please do so. Chris, thanks for the
Yeah.
information. For those of you tuning in, thanks for doing so. If you're not following us on social media, please do that as well. Look forward to talking to you more in the future, and have a great rest of your day.
Yep. Take care.